Let me see.
Hey, this is Brian Reed, your realtor doing more at the Jersey Shore. And I am here today with Ian Walsh of Hard Money Bankers. Thanks for joining me, Ian.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm checking your feed right now to see if we've got, should be live on your, yeah, there we are. I see us. It's working.
Okay, perfect. If you're getting too much feedback, I apologize. In the beginning of this, I just want to tell you, anyone logging on, if you would like to receive a free hoodie, they're super comfortable, from Ian Walsh, submit your questions today. The best questions get a free Hard Money Bankers hoodie. So, Ian, why don't you tell me and the viewers a little bit about what you do, and then I have a bunch of questions for you.
Yeah, sure. So, Brian, thanks for having me on. You've always been exceptional to work with. You're one of the guys that's cutting edge in the social media world, which is really cool. There's not too many of us there. So thanks for having me. I appreciate you hosting me on the show.
It's great to have you. You know, like minds, I try to surround myself with as many different people that are looking for the same end goal, to help our clients, to help our customers, and just to better ourselves.
Yeah, man. So, briefly for what I do, I honestly, the easiest way to say it is I do private lending for investors. There's no other way to put it. It's not too crazy or too complicated. I think people get really confused about hard money lending, but it's not like a bank. It's literally like me coming to you and saying, hey, can I borrow 200 grand to renovate and flip this house? And I'm an asset-driven private local lender. I'm not one of the big guys that tries to do this nationally and waits for appraisals. But in our marketplace, I'm probably the largest, specifically in the Philadelphia, South Jersey region. We also cover, I have two partners in Maryland, DC, and Northern Virginia. But what hard money is private lending for real estate investors that want to fix and flip or fix and renovate and then resell. That's the very short end of it. It's very quick closings. Asset driven versus credit driven, that kind of stuff.
So let me ask you this, just give some people the depth and how big you guys actually are. Right now, can you give us a general idea of what you have out there in loans currently?
Oh, sure. I mean, the easiest way to look at it, probably we just measure it like yearly. So we do about $40 million in deployment a year. That's what I believe. I mean, it's probably a little bit more to saturate, the marketplace with. But beyond that, it's not a matter of whether we need more money, because we certainly don't. We could easily deploy a ton more, but because it's always ready to go. But truly, it's based on having the available amount of deals in the marketplace, like really good deals. They're not as easy to come by as people think. So, but at capacity, we do about $40 million in deployment a year. That's pretty consistent with us.
Okay. So I know some of the people that you've lent money to in the past, and typically they're not finding the deals that are necessarily on the MLS. They're finding those deals prior to getting to the MLS. Now, there's people like myself, realtors, that will find those deals that are outside the MLS listings. Sorry for the feedback. I'm going to try to reduce my sound a little bit. But how do you guys analyze a deal to decide whether or not you lend on it? Because I know you're not as much credit driven and assets versus what a borrower may have in liabilities. But how do you make a determination of whether or not you're going to lend on the deal?
So a lot of it, there's a reason we're localized. It comes back to the fundamental basis of hard money lending being asset driven. So we're localized in the way that, like, I don't do any deals in California. I don't even do any deals in like Harrisburg because I don't know the market. So it's very important. I don't know. It's hard to say to people. It'd be like this. If I came to you, actually, we talked about this, Brian. You're extremely knowledgeable about your area, and you knew the nuances and the ins and outs of certain areas of the shore, where you are, and that's just you knowing your market, right? So over the years, the last 10 years, I've probably done over 1,000 transactions, seen hundreds of thousands of deals, like literally, because I used to wholesale a lot, and I understood what a good deal to an investor really means, and I understood how to comp it out, and I understood how to underwrite a borrower. So ultimately, a good deal is determined when you send it over to me. I have a method, or not a method, but I've comped so many deals over the years that I know right away whether there's going to be enough spread, because I like the flipper to do a deal, make money, and come back. Like, I don't ever want a loan to own, as they call it. So it's very important to us that when I look at this and go, okay, there's some real spread here on this deal, you know, he's going to make money on it. That's a successful situation. So comping, you know, I always am in the MLS constantly, whether it's, you know, trend MLS by us or what have you, but I'm always looking at, I can give everybody kind of a rundown. You're inside the city. You want to be inside, you know, inside of 1/10 of a mile to see the recent sales on a property. You start to derive the value of the property. In some areas of the city, you're on the same block. You go too far, you'll see it. So it's a very honest look at what the value of a property is based on being inside the information of sales, inventory, what's out there, what does a top end product look like, and I have to look at it and say constantly, is this a good deal or is this not a good deal? And if I see that right away, when somebody, I mean, literally people just email me the address, the renovation costs, and the construction numbers, and I'll tell you the same exact day, and I'll close it tomorrow if I like the deal. So those are really the only things I'm looking at when I'm considering it. And then I'll consider the borrower I'm dealing with in terms of how I want to put a max number maybe on my loan size. So in the event that you have beat up credit, I can still do a deal with you, but I can offset my risk where maybe I'd be at, say, 65% of the after repair value of my max loan, which is pretty common in our industry. Maybe I'm at 50% because, you know, your credit's banged up and you're a little bit of a higher risk to me, but I'll still, if it's a good deal, I'll still put a number on it. But ultimately it's asset driven, being that I look at the deal first, I tell you the same day, and I can close in 24 hours. And that's when I'm comping a deal. All I do, I sit, there's no shortcut. When you're comping deals, you sit in the MLS. I sit there all day. I have bad posture because I look at the computer screen all day.
So I've watched some of the things that you've done, and I do know for a fact that the experienced investor, when they bring you a spreadsheet and they know all their costs and the repair values are pretty head on. You know, most of the people that have been doing the flips for a while know exactly the cost for a 200 square foot room full of carpet and all those types of things. And I know you also lend to those investors that are just starting out. So as these people bring you a deal, what are you looking for from them to get that deal approved in a quicker amount of time?
Yeah, so a couple things I like to consider. So there's a lot of little things in a very short period of time that I can derive because you have the conversation enough times, you know where it's headed. So the first thing I look at is the acquisition price. Sometimes I ask for what the person thinks the ARV is, meaning the after repair value, what they think their out sale number is. The reason I ask that is not because I actually care what they think it is, because I have to ultimately base it on the number I think it is, but because I want to see how close they're going to be to my number. So you could be a new investor. I work with new investors all the time. But when I put the pieces together, being that what's this thing going to resell for, and I say it's going to resell for 300, and you say, hey, I think I'm going to get 310. We're pretty close. Now, one of two things I can take away from that: either A, you know your market, or B, you got very lucky. I don't know which, but it's either way, it's a good sign that we're kind of starting from the same position. And then two, you send me your construction numbers and acquisition costs. So the acquisition cost is what it is, right? You settle on a negotiation, and that's where you are. But the construction costs are very significant in also me telling, you know, how much research did you do before taking this? Because the construction costs, like if you have a house, a 2,000 square foot house in the suburbs that is a 4-bed, 2-bath, and you tell me you're going to renovate it for $15,000 and you're going to bring it up, you're going to pay $15,000 is going to make it the same level of quality that top house that you're trying to get 300 grand for is going to be. I know you don't know what you're doing. You didn't research the construction enough, and now it's a red flag. So I look for accuracy on construction numbers because the answer to that should be between 45 and 60 grand to get that number. I look for a little bit of accuracy on what you think the out sale is on the property, because you can't change the price that you negotiated on the sale, but you can, have a good awareness of those other two numbers. So if we're pretty accurate on that, I can tell right away that we're going to have a pretty good deal. If we're not, you're going to see it when I send you a quote back in a big gap in the amount of money it would take for you to come to the table to make the deal work. You're going to say, I don't really think that you have the right back end number. That's what that comes down to. But ultimately, if I have those three things, I can tell you the same thing. Literally close it. I've actually closed the deal right by you guys. The guy will be putting in touch with you when he goes to do the out sale. but closed it in 24 hours. I got a call up here, $500,000 deal, a great deal, and we funded it in 24 hours because I liked the deal. And when he goes to outsell it, I'll be talking to him about you. So.
Absolutely. I just want to take a little pause. If there's questions, I'm not looking at this on Facebook, but if there's any questions that anyone has, please make sure that you type them on the screen. And Ian, why don't we take just a moment here or two? If people are looking to get some funding, what's the best contact to reach you at?
Sure. My phone number is 215-839-3271. And my email is just my first name, IAN, @hardmoneybankers.com. And either one works. I think it's fair also, Brian, I'll turn that around and ask you, you're the guy when I have people ask me questions about your area, I say, you got to go to Brian Reed. You're on the big radar down there. So how do people get a hold of you if they're selling a house?
Well, my Facebook page, I use my Facebook page more than any kind of other web page. I'm doing live videos. I'm doing any kind of promotional marketing through that page. Here's a tip for everybody. If you want to find me, just type in my cell phone number, 609-848-4041, either into Google or onto Facebook. So if you have somebody's number and you're looking for them and they used it to log onto their Facebook, you can find them. There's a tip that you won't really get from everyone else.
That's
Type in their cell phone number into Facebook search and you'll find them. It's the best way. A name like Brian Reed, there's thousands of them. Look for John Smith on Facebook. Very, very difficult.
That's a good point. Yeah.
What percentage of the construction acquisition do you typically loan on? What are you looking to do in that kind of?
Yeah, so the speed that we use, because we're not like a typical bank, right? Or I'm not a bank at all. So I don't need your W-2s and tax returns. So you say, how do you derive the decision on a deal then if I don't need to know anything very little about the borrower? I need to be right on my values. So I typically go up to, most lenders you'll find start their calculation around 65% of the after repair value. That means they'll go up to 65% of the resale value. If you think the house is going to resell for $100,000, that means they'll typically allocate towards construction and acquisition $65,000, 65% of 100. So that's usually the starting point, and that number can flex in either direction based on a number of things. But I typically go up to most of the 65. I think you got some feedback there. Oh, there we go. So that's typically what you'll see in the event that you're going to ask me for a starting point, but that can flex just depending on the quality of the borrower. Maybe is the area shaky? We have a couple areas around here that pretty dicey. You go into brewery town, Philadelphia, and man, you got to be careful. So that 65 can become 60 or 55 real quick if you don't have comps on the block. So, but 65% is a pretty good starting point.
It's always nice to have some skin in the game from the gentleman actually asking for the money. So how much, here's the important question everybody wants to know. What does hard money cost?
So skin in the game, as far as skin in the game, are you saying how much cash to close or how much does it cost?
A little bit of both. I mean, what kind of percentage rates are we talking? What it's the closing cost like?
Sure. So skin in the game, I typically, I usually tell people 15 to 20% on a deal that we see eye to eye on is going to be the cash to close. Meaning, if you need $100,000, I'm probably going to see 15 or 20 grand that you're going to bring to the table to make me comfortable that we're going to sweat a little bit side by side. If I don't see eye to eye on the after repair value, that could be higher. Also, though, people ask me a lot about 100% funding and so forth. And hey, do you fund 100%? Yes, I do. The 100% that you're asking me about, and the 100% I'm talking about are two different things. 100% funding in the event that I'm funding 100% of construction and acquisition up to a certain number, meaning I escrow the construction funds. Anything above that number, you'd be responsible for. The 100% funding that people want from 2007 can also be done, but it's not going to be done without skin in the game in some way, meaning we'll cross collateralize. So if you have other properties, and I have a lot of investors like this, they might own something free and clear. They paid $100,000 for it. If I bring that into the mix of the process, that could contribute up to $100,000 or $60,000 worth of cash into the deal. So you could come to the table with no money down. That's what people really ask me, no money down. So that's in the event for how much skin in the game we like to see. We can get pretty darn creative. We're probably the most creative in the area in terms of being able to get deals done. In regards to your question about cost, so you're going to see things all over the board in our world, and that's a whole different conversation. But you're going to see typically 1 year notes. You see some people at 6 month notes, and it's usually going to be money's going to be about 12 to 16% interest over 1 year, and it's going to be anywhere from like 2 to 6 points. People who don't, or their first experience with it, are like, well, I can go to a bank and get it for 6%. It's like, no, you can't, or you can try to close in a week and get that done. Or B, you can understand how short-term money works, because it's interest only for up to 1 year. The easiest way to look at it is if you have, let's say, a 12% note or 14% note, the money is going to run you about 1 point a month or 1.17% a month for up to a year. So how fast you are at executing and reselling the deal will determine how much you actually pay for that. So if you're in and out in, say, 3 months or 4 months, you paid like 6 or 7%. If you're in and out in 12 months, on a 16% loan and 6 points, you just paid 22%. So the speed of the borrower is really the biggest concern of how cheap the money is going to end up being for them. And that's why, that's how it works. It's short-term money versus amortized over a 25-year period.
So I love the connections that we have in common, with some of the other gentlemen that are realtors that really are just out there hustling, and I'm attracted to that. And the fact of the matter is that I know a lot of the people that have lent money to and watch what they do with their properties. And most of them, some of the people have sold their properties through me. And typically, we have those properties sold before they're even finished. And we have them under contract, which is really just is very advantageous. And, I'm not trying to sit here and say get a realtor, but if you want to get that property sold and you don't want to go to that year mark, rather than, having the property done and sold upon completion, upon getting that CO for the property, you should really think about dealing with a professional.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I can't.
That way you're not paying those points every month.
I can't stress enough. If you came to me first in a hard money loan and said you're not going to use a realtor, I'd say I'm not doing the deal. You have to use a realtor on the out. And then absolutely, if you can get a polished realtor or somebody that's dominating your area, I'd love to have. If I had a house personally in the area, I'd be coming to you because, and I'm not. I'm not advertising you. I'm saying you're really the guy I would go to because I watch what you do compared to anybody else online. I know there's a lot of effort going into moving properties and getting things sold and being good at it. So absolutely have a realtor. You should have them on both ends, quite frankly, because I'm a huge fan of realtors. A lot of people think that investors and realtors are different. Not the case. So an investor is just a realtor without a license to some capacity. It's not much of a difference. But the best realtors and the best people I deal with in this industry are the realtors that find good deals, and then they, we go ahead and fund it, and then they resell the house. They're familiar with the house, they're familiar with the borrower, they're familiar with the process, they know the area, they do both sides of the sales, they feed the flipper needs them, right? The flipper needs the source of properties, because if you have a realtor who doesn't know how to spot a deal, then they're not going to flip any houses. But if you have a good investor-friendly realtor, not only should you do the deal with them, hold on tight to them, because I know people make a lot of money with them, but you absolutely should have them do the resale on the property. And from a lender's perspective, I feel a lot more comfortable with a realtor that was able to identify a deal because they knew it was a deal, which means they know how to price a deal, which means I know they're going to put it at the right price on the way out. So all that stuff makes me feel comfortable as a lender. And I recommend it because realtors can make a very nice living doing just that, both sides of the deal.
Well, I mean, the one thing, especially down here, a lot of our investors are coming from outside this area. It's a Philly, it's in North Jersey, and they can come down there and they can look at the street and say 24th Street looks great. Well, right where they're buying the house is where the flooding starts. So maybe there is that 5 or 10% difference in where they're at compared to 2 houses down, or we know the neighbor behind you is a complete mess. And the fact remains that without that firsthand knowledge. Now, there's a lot of flippers that do everything on their own, and I give them 100% credit, but they're really in tune with the market. Just like Philadelphia, you can go half a block to a block, or you can be talking about a building that's right across the street from another that maybe you have down here at least, maybe you have 4 owners in that one condo complex, and 3 of them are just a complete pain in the ass. And there's a reason why that property is selling at 5 or 10% below what the comps are showing. And just because you fix that property up and think it's going to be comping out at some of the neighbors, you may not know that that condo association, because you're paying cash, doesn't have a solid association. There's no insurance on the building.
Yep.
So like if everyone else owns cash and you're buying cash, there may not be condo insurance on that building. And when you go to flip it to somebody, you're only going to have a cash buyer. So
Yeah.
I know for a fact that your market, especially in Philadelphia, and you rely on people like myself and others, to give you that honest appraisal and to absolutely know the market 100%. And I don't know the answer to this, but I have a pretty good idea.
Okay.
What percentage of properties do you guys end up taking back?
Really, 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 really low. It's really low. So we do a very good job, way less than a bank. It's crazy. People would think that we take a lot. We're in this business, but it is. I mean, it's under 1%. And if you're at that point, honestly, we try to make it work. Like, we're not here to take your house. I don't want your house ever, 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 ever. So we try to make it work out. We try to make sense of it. We try to work with our clients. And therefore, that actual foreclosure is, people call me all the time saying, hey, do you have any foreclosures I can buy? And I'm like, sorry, it's a clean portfolio. Like, I don't have anything for you. If I do, I'll let you know. But, we really try to work with our clients. And that is definitely a, reputation this business has, a loan to own. Maybe some companies are like that. We are definitely not. It's just.
And I'm assuming that if you've analyzed the loan the way that I know you analyze these loans, and for whatever reason, the borrower goes into default and can't pay you, you already know that that's a solid deal. And whether they came into problems with the construction office or couldn't get their contractor out to do what they needed to be done, I'm sure you have people that are just willing to scoop up those deals and finish your project and make the money on the out sales.
Sure. Like, I have people call me for that all the time. I think there's just a misconception that that's the case, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot to get in that position, for somebody to be in that position with us, honestly. What, Brian, did you see there's a Michael Van Dorsen is asking questions? Do you able to see that on your end?
So I'm not pulling up any questions.
Okay.
So, wait, no, I got you. Block to block comp is best what I see. Where are you comfortable on LTV with rehab it, fund it? And that's the last question I had from Michael Van Dorsen.
Yeah, that's the one I see there. It just popped up. As far as where are you comfortable with LTV with a rehab funded, I'd have to ask you to clarify that question, Michael, if you could. So far, you have the best question because it's the only one that I've seen pop up. So therefore, you're in the running to win the hoodie. Second question is, can you clarify? Because I'm not quite sure exactly what you're asking me there. So we'll come back to that when you respond to it. But yeah, to answer your question, Brian, sure, we don't take back many properties, no.
What do you think is what's your primary wheelhouse on the average home price that you're lending on, or maybe acquisition costs or at the ARV?
Yeah, that's a good question. So most of our deals that we end up funding are going to fund, like, the actual amount going out is somewhere between, say, 75 to like 350,000. Anywhere in that range is a pretty common deal that we see, which means your ARVs, the ARV that I don't like to go under is 120,000. And there's a reason for that. It's not because I don't believe you can't make money in areas where the ARV is less than 120. It's because that's where, in most markets around us, it's a rule of thumb, is where the FHA market really starts and stops. So when you go under 120, it's not all areas. Some areas are a little bit different, but you start getting into an area that's heavily non-owner occupied. And when you're non-owner occupied, in the event that I had to deal with your house or you got hit by a bus and I got to deal with your house, I don't want to sell it to another investor necessarily. I want it to be in an area, or if I do, I want to sell it in an area that has a quick owner occupied out, as opposed to another investor coming in and just renting it out for cash flow, because you're going to get basically what you paid for it almost any day of the week. So that's kind of a bar that we use for ARV. I like it to be 120,000 and up, and it keeps it in nice, clean flip deals. There's not really much money in a flip at 70 grand. And if you're not gonna, put $40,000 into a house you buy for 20 to try to resell for 70 in a neighborhood that it's just, there's no home ownership. So there's nothing to compare it to. So 120 and up is the ARV we look for. I can do a loan of $10,000. That doesn't matter as long as the resale is 120 and up.
So what's the most you've lent? And where do you start getting those sweats a little bit where you're putting the money out? I'm sure it really doesn't matter how much you're putting out there, but there is, when I'm playing blackjack and I'm playing $25, $50 a hand and it goes up incrementally, there is a mark where I say, ooh, like, am I doubling down on this? So
yeah.
Where's that comfortability level? Where's been that sweat?
So there's a personal answer to that. I think every lender will be different. My personal answer is if you're doing a loan for probably about $500,000 and up, I get a little bit, hey, let's really make sure this thing is tightly run. There's that would be my number, around $500,000, something like that, because it's expensive. You got to make sure the person has a very clean exit strategy. But at $500,000, I'll still do the deal. I think the biggest one we've done in our company is like $2 million. It was just a deal that made sense, but $500,000, somewhere between $500,000 and up, and I'll really, I'll sweat. Probably literally sweat.
Okay. So, I'm looking for any kind of questions. If you want to share this video, I really, really appreciate it. Ian, why don't you tell everyone again where you can be reached at, to send you deals that people are looking at, and to look for funding?
Yeah, it's just my phone number is 215-839-3271, and my email is IAN, just my first name, @hardmoneybankers.com.
Okay. And I don't need a name, but
okay.
One of your top guys that are doing flips, how much money are you lending to them? Or do they get to a point where they're doing so many, they're using their own money, or are they continuing to borrow from you guys just because?
Oh, no, a lot of guys, there's nobody, anywhere I go, there's always a capacity. Almost every experienced heavy flipper is using other money, because even if that guy has $2 million, sounds like a lot of money. Sure it is. But the heavy flippers that are doing 50 or 100 deals a year, we have a guy in our Maryland, down by Maryland, does, I think he's like 1,000 transactions a year, 1,000 flips. It's a huge operation. Uses a lot of secondary financing, like, such as our money or somebody else's. So at that level in general, it never stops. So there's always a moment when you're just like, these guys understand leverage very well, because they multiply their buying power by about 5 times. So a guy that has 2 million now has 10 million. And if you're running that big operation, you need that. So I would say with me, I don't know, most I've had out on one particular borrower was probably 7, 8 deals, particularly with that borrower. But yeah, I have a lot of borrowers that will do, they'll work with different money. They might do 100 deals this year. They might use me for 3. But it's very rare to see somebody that is scaling and doing this full time that does it specifically on their own cash. Usually those guys that do it specifically on their own cash do 1, maybe 2 a year, and that's okay too. But they also don't like doing that, because a lot of times they're maxing out their own account. So they're like, hey, I'm doing my 1 flip this year. I'm going to buy it for 120. I have a bank account of 150, and they sweat so hard. So eventually they come to me and go, I don't want to sweat like this, because my bank account gets wiped out for 6 months, and they don't like it. So that same deal that I can get them into might cost them $30,000 to get into, or they can, do 2 deals at a time, whatever it may be. So, but yeah, that's kind of what we run into with, most people think that all of a sudden you hit this level where you don't need it anymore. But all the big guys that I deal with, all of them have, and they just use different forms of financing.
So, I don't want you to give away all of your flippers' secrets. Mm-hmm. But, in a market like where I'm at, we're a second home market. Most of the people don't own down here as their primary residence. Now, 2 things I've just found out. One was that the conventional loans are going to be going from a 5% or a 10% down primary home conventional to either a 3 or a 5%. So there's going to be more homeowners coming onto the market, which I think down here, especially in the offshore market, meaning you're not on the barrier islands, there's going to be a need for those homes, because your borrowers are going to be able to buy a $150,000 home with very little money down. And I think there's a huge opportunity for flippers to make some money in that market. That being said, because of the amount of properties that go to foreclosure, because they're a second home, because of a bad job market or divorce or the like, it's a second home. It's the first one to go. We all know that. Where are your flippers finding those deals that are not on the MLS? How are they finding that property to get something that might have 40 or 50% equity in the home, or finding that desperate seller?
There's always the one-off. It's not the majority of them.
Well, Ian, I lost you somehow.
Lost me?
I don't know. Are you still there?
I can hear you. Yeah, I got you, Brian. Yeah, I got you.
Well, listen, maybe Ian can go to comments and answer that question with some of the places that his borrowers or his flippers are finding those good deals. I'm not sure if we had a half-hour timer on that, but we're at that 1:30 mark. I do appreciate. Okay, perfect. All right, Ian, go ahead. I lost you on my end of the feed.
Okay. Hopefully they
take
can
it away and just kind of let me know when you're done.
Yeah. So so off-market deals. Typically, an off-market deal you're looking at is going to be wholesalers. A lot of guys tap into wholesalers. That's where they come from. And I got Dane can hear me as well. What's up, Dane? So it comes from wholesalers, or they do their own direct marketing, typically mailers, typically that kind of stuff. But a lot of deals come from wholesalers. I love wholesalers. Wholesalers are dealers without a license. So it comes from wholesalers, or they do their own direct. I love our guys getting off market kind of stuff. But a lot of deals come from wholesalers. I love wholesalers. Brian, you there? Let me see if I can answer Mike's question when Brian's figuring out the mics there. Michael, so on ARV of 200 with a 45K rehab, what would be the amount you would loan on a non-owner occupied property? $208,000 ARV, $130,000. That would be my starting point. I need to know more about what you're acquiring it for. If I choose
so,
but yeah,
I'm not hearing your end anymore. And when I go onto the Facebook, I'm getting a ton of feedback. So I'm probably going to turn it off here in a second. Ian, I really want to thank you for coming on with me today. I really appreciate it. I hope that if anyone's looking for funding, that they reach out to you, send Ian a personal message. He has a ton of followers, so you can either follow him, send him a direct message. Ian, if you want to, before we go, give them your phone number again. And most of the people here probably know where to find me, right here every day on Facebook. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Ian.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate you. You're a really good guy. Always been fun to work with. And 215-839-3271. Again, 215-839-3271 or Ian@hardmoneybankers.com.
Well, I am going to end this. I can no longer hear Ian. Thank you guys all for stopping by. If you have any questions, if you're looking for properties down in Wildwood, the Villas, North Cape May, Avalon, Stone Harbor, Margate, Sea Isle, Ocean City, Northfield, Summers Point, Pleasantville. I'm not sure if I mentioned Ocean City, but these are key areas that I can find you those deals in. My number is 609-848-4041. Thanks for stopping by.